go at the line on this season of the Extra Mile. Good evening, everyone. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr. I'm here to welcome you into the live of the Extra Mile for tonight, November the 7th, 2019. And folks, an excellent racing season is coming to an end. We've decided the second of the three major championships that we talk about on this program. And the third one is going to be decided in just a couple of weeks, where a fan favorite is currently in crisis mode to make that championship. For to help me dissect all of it, that's all my coach for the evening. Not what it seems, it's Miss Caitlin C.
Daryl, a long time. How's it going?
It is going extremely well. Nice to hear from you once again. Hope your weekend was great. Spent time at a racetrack filming for class and just taking my mind off of stressful matters, as in trying to, get through grad school because, grad school. So I went out to the Haltech World Cup Finals import versus domestic race that was held this past November 2nd and 3rd, and it was a fun event. It was my first time ever going to this event that went from a one-day race to a 5-day Super Bowl of import versus domestic drag racing. And the first thing I will say about the event is I have never seen so many drag package Civics and Supras and Nissan GTRs in my life. There was hundreds of them, Caitlin, and the GTR and the Supra, those are two cars I don't equate with drag racing, but I guess our generation that grew up on the Fast and the Furious, they took those cars and they ran with them and they made them go 6 seconds. So whatever works, I guess.
They decided to take it to heart, apparently.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny.
There are also a lot of Mazdas out there. So there was a Pro Mod RX, either RX-7 or RX-8, that set the rotary record for fastest time in a quarter mile. Which, another thing about drag racing, I learned this weekend, there is a record for any type of car that you wish. Because in the one weekend, we saw records for Wild Street category, Pro Mod, fastest rotary category, fastest GTR with stock turbo positioning. I think we saw a True Street world record as well. Like, there's so many world records, and I said this on Twitter when I made my little observations post. If you like stat keeping, if you're a stat keeping nerd, drag racing is where you need to be, because there is a time and speed statistic for about any car you wish.
It's pretty impressive.
And the final point that I will put before we get into the show, pretty sure my girlfriend is going to kill me if I drag her to another cold drag strip, because the two times I've taken her to a drag race have been in November for some reason. The first time was a couple of weeks.
That's one way to form a bond.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we went to Capitol Raceway to see the nostalgic funny cars. I'm like, oh, it's going to be 60 degrees. It's going to be fine. Until we got to the race and the sun went down and it was like 40 degrees and we didn't have a blanket in it or anything like that. So we decided to leave early. And then at this race, everything was going great until we had a timing issue on Sunday that took away 2 hours of time. So we're sitting there 8 o'clock trying to do semifinals and finals, and it's like 38 degrees outside. I'm like, you know what? Let me go ahead and get on that. Let's go ahead and get on out of here, because it's cold. And
What happens?
And if Miriam is listening, I promise the next time we go to a drag race, it will not be cold. I promise.
Don't make promises you can't keep, though, Daryl.
Oh, goodness. No, I already told her. The next one we're going to is in July. So it will not be cold.
Let us hope, at least.
If it's cold in July, we've got bigger problems. But anyway, let's get started into the program proper. And we're going to start with Formula One. And this was the worst kept secret of the season. This championship was pretty much decided about the halfway point. But Caitlin, I get to say this for the 6th time. My F1 champion is black. Lewis Hamilton wins his 6th World Drivers' Championship at his favorite racetrack, it seems, the U.S. Grand Prix at the Circuit of the Americas after finishing second to Valtteri Bottas. Caitlin, this was a championship that we saw coming, but for Lewis and the Mercedes team, this one was made a little bit more sweeter because they lost Niki Lauda during this season, and they get to dedicate it to him as we go into the sunset of the F1 season.
Yeah, and it's still really cool. You know what I mean? Like, it's exciting, and you can't... As annoying as it gets when they always, like, win all the time, it's still really exciting.
Yes.
And you got to be happy for them. I mean, everybody was excited for Jimmy Johnson when he won all his championships, so why can't we, pay the same respect to Lewis? I think it's the same thing. I mean, he's super dominating. We haven't seen, a driver of that caliber in some time. Like, really, there was nobody again to challenge him this year. And I think that's kind of, it's proof of the success of Mercedes just as much as it's proof for him. But
Well, the problem is, of course, Ferrari, they backed the wrong horse. I really believe if they had backed Leclerc for this entire season instead of trying to get the dead horse, which was Sebastian Vettel, to actually do something, they probably would still be challenging for the championship, or hey, maybe even Leclerc is looking at winning the championship as a rookie at this point, because the kid had some speed, but they consistently pulled the strategy in favor of Sebastian Vettel, which, let's be honest, he does not do well when he has to race somebody for the championship. He is a front runner. His time during the Red Bull years with Weber and Ricciardo, as well as him now at Ferrari, proves that at this point. It just doesn't make sense, Caitlin, why they continued to strategize with Vettel being positive even when they were losing time to Mercedes. I just don't get it.
You know what's funny about this, though, is I think this is one of those things where, you know how, like, there's that saying, it's like, don't point out the sliver in somebody else's eye when you have a plank in your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, and honestly, it's almost just a Formula One thing, but I feel like they all spend so much time pointing at other people and complaining about other teams and going off about the stuff that they don't have compared to somebody else, that none of them really take the time to just focus internally on what they need to do to improve. Mm-hmm. So as long as these teams are focused on complaining about Mercedes or whining about Mercedes or complaining about what they don't have that Mercedes has, nobody's going to improve. Because until you take that critical eye and you turn it in on yourself, it's not going to change your team at all. If anything, you're just going to get worse, because instead of focusing on improvement, you're just focusing on the improvements of others.
All right.
And I really think that's what the main problem is with Formula One right now, is that instead of focusing whole hog on how each of these teams can individually improve to get better, they're just focused on these top teams, again, Mercedes, and what they have that the other teams don't have. And I just don't see how anybody can improve if that's how you're going around with all of this stuff.
I don't see how they improve either. But the main problem is Mercedes just blows everybody away every year.
But you want to know why, though? It's because Mercedes didn't focus on anybody else but themselves.
No.
And look at where it got, and they're still that way. Do you think that they're worried about, do you think they're looking in their rearview mirrors, worried about what's going to happen because of the other teams? No. They're just focused on themselves and getting better and doing what they can.
Well, they just started, they've already worked on their 2020 car. They started working on that back when the summer break started, while Ferrari is still trying to innovate on the 2019 car, so they're going to have a leg up once again on next season, because the one thing that helps them is they get these such big leads in the Constructors' Championship that they can coast the second half of the season. And you could really see during this, once they got out of the summer break, they were just phoning it in because they had already moved a bunch of their resources to 2020, which a lot of these teams, especially teams in the back of the midfield that are still battling for these year-end World Teams Championship points-paying positions, they still have to fight. So they still have to work on their 2019 car at the expense of working towards next year, while Mercedes is already halfway to developing that car by now. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they're ready to start, if they've already started constructing it at this point, while the other teams are still still working off the drawing boards. They're still trying to get the 2019 car going.
Yeah, but they can do that. I mean, honestly, to be honest, most teams should take Mercedes as example here, and they should all focus on 2020 now as well.
Yeah.
What are you going to get out of the rest of this year? Absolutely nothing. Focus on next year now. Period.
Yeah, there's not a lot you can do at this point because the season's over as far as the titles. They've been handed out. You look at the standings, as we're going to go look at the constructor standings first. Mercedes has 695. They're locked into where they are. Ferrari 479. Well, Mercedes obviously locked in. They won the dang thing. Ferrari is second. I think they're pretty much locked into second. Red Bull's third. McLaren Renault is fourth. Then regular Renault is fifth. I think those top three teams are probably starting to shut it down and get ready for 2020. We already know Mercedes has. Ferrari's still trying to develop on the 2019 car, but at this point, they've probably shifted over the vast majority of resources towards 2020. Then Red Bull, Honda, they're probably working on 2020 as well, so they can get their cars ready. But then you've got this dogfight between regular Renault, Racing Point, Toro Rosso's changing their name next season, and Alfa Romeo. There's still enough points to where these positions can change all the way down to Haas. So these teams, instead of working on 2020, they still feel like they start to fight the 2019 points, and it's just going to keep growing that gap between the big and small teams. It's sad to say.
But it's really true, though, too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
you just want it to get better, you know?
You just do. So for the actual U.S. Grand Prix, Bottas ends up winning the race from Hamilton. Hamilton was on a one-stop strategy. Bottas on a two-stop was able to come around Hamilton to win that race. And Sebastian Vettel lost a whole bunch of positions at the start. And Caitlin, his suspension on his car ends up breaking. And that's pretty much... This race was a microcosm of the whole season. It was Mercedes streaking away and Vettel just dropping down the order and having issues pretty much the entire season. And that is the entire Ferrari story of this season, last season, pretty much as long as they've been doing this show, really.
And it's underwhelming.
Yep. And it's hard to, as you could tell during the season, it became hard to talk about Formula One because you kind of knew what was going to happen, but you tuned in because you hoped something would go wrong, and something did go wrong sometimes. Lewis had a terrible race in Germany when the rains just came bucketing down. I think that was the best race of the year. But now we're sitting here. We're going into Brazil. Lewis has the championship. And now we'll get to see, do they cut Bottas loose? Those two are going to get to fight each other more? Or do they continue? Which I could see that now that the championship's been decided, it is full on every man for themselves. So it should make for interesting races in Brazil, which is November 15th through the 17th, and then Abu Dhabi, which will actually be ending our season before that race, and we'll explain that a little bit later. So we should get some interesting races here down the stretch, I think.
Hopefully it'll be something to keep us on our toes.
Yes.
Hopefully.
But now
because right now, there's no incentive to finish out the season.
No.
As a viewer. I don't feel like you got to give us incentive at this point.
Well, this is why, unfortunately, if you want to look at why NASCAR went to the playoff system, it was for this reason, which was they didn't want to see the huge drop-off of fans because we knew the championship was decided in about August. So, love or hate the playoffs, it makes these final 10 races, it makes you actually need to tune in to these last few races because you need to see who's going to win the championship. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a 4-car runoff to decide who's going to be the championship of NASCAR, while here in Formula One, there's really no reason to tune into the last 2 races. It's all over.
Exactly.
So with these titles decided, we go into 2020 with the question, now that Lewis Hamilton has separated himself from Juan Manuel Fangio with his 6th championship, can he tie Michael Schumacher next season with his 7th title? And can he go on in 2021 and stand alone as the greatest driver in Formula One history with his 8th championship? And before we say that it's a lock, let us remind ourselves that in NASCAR, Jimmy Johnson has not reached that 8th title, and Caitlin, I don't think he is. It is really hard to break that ceiling of championships because you have to be on the top of your game for so long, and the team has to be on top of its game for so long to the point that you are a generation-defining race team when you pull this off.
Absolutely. And I feel like part of the tricky thing with it is that in this age of NASCAR, I just don't think it's almost hard to hit the consistency if you think, straight through. And for the fact, let's think of it this way. You are consistent enough to make it into the playoffs. You're consistent enough to make it into the championship Final Four. Mm-hmm. One race that you either you only managed to commit 97% of your awesomeness into the race, or one driver has 1% more of an edge to you and beats you out by 1 position. I feel like that's the biggest challenge now, is that in the day and age of Jimmy Johnson, it was a lot like Lewis Hamilton, where you just, even if you dominated severely early on in the season, there's a chance that it's enough to help coast you out through the end of the racing season. And so you can peak early and kind of coast your way to it, which you can't do now. You can't have just a good beginning of the season or a middle of the season. If you manage to have a decent season up to the point that you can get into the playoffs and then have a great season after that, then you absolutely can pull it off. You could just be a mediocre driver, manage to get into the playoffs and have a great playoff round and still become a champion. But the consistency part literally if you have one not great race, that can be it for you now.
Yep.
And while it makes it intriguing and it also makes it nerve-wracking, that doesn't necessarily mean anymore that even the greatest driver or the best driver of the year is even winning the championship anymore. Could you imagine it coming down to one race for 4 cars in Formula One, that Lewis Hamilton could be a completely dominating driver the entire year, but one race Verstappen runs into the back of him, or Bottas just happens to eke out of him a little bit better somewhere and he ends up losing to somebody else who didn't do as well? Like, sometimes if you think about it from that perspective, it just changes it up a little bit. It is exciting and nerve-wracking, but again, there is a very small chance that the best driver doesn't win the championship in NASCAR.
Yep. And unfortunately...
And when Jimmy Johnson raced, that's very clearly how it worked.
Yep. And right now in Formula One, basically best car, best team's going to run away with it. Now, we're not saying there should be a playoff system in Formula One because Lord knows team orders are a problem now. Now you want to throw a playoff format in there, it's going to make Spingate look like an accident or like a debris caution compared to what the F1 teams would be doing with a playoff format. But we'll close the book on that for now. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and on the next side of this show, Roger Penske bought a thing, a rather big thing. We'll explain what that thing is on the other side of this break here on the Extra Mile, here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What up, all you boxing fans? This is Vince Wright, the sports governor, and me and Gilbert Batista are the host of Ringside on IE Sports Radio. Make sure you keep it tuned to IE Sports Radio, Spreaker.com for the latest edition of Ringside. All the boxing news you need right here. Keep it tuned, Spreaker.com, IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, IE Sports Radio proudly brings to you its intergender tag team champions of the world. Yes, I am Martin Sandoval. My co-host is Felicia, and we are the hosts of The Gorilla Position, live Saturday mornings, 8 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. We bring to you all the latest in news and rumors and opinions and perspectives on the world of professional wrestling. We bring you guys the latest in WWE, Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and including independent wrestling such as Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and here VIP Wrestling live from Texas. Yes, it is the Gorilla Position with myself, Martin Sandoval, and my co-host Felicia, live on Spreaker.com and on iTunes.
Attention, all sports fans! If you're someone who wakes up each morning with lists of sporting events to go along with your to-do list for the day, then you just might be a diehard. The world of sports is as vast as the ocean is deep, including the major leagues, the minor leagues, the college, and everything in between. This is me, your boy Larry B of IE Sports Radio, welcoming you to join me every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on The Defining Moment, a show that focuses on what really matters in the sports world, sports themselves, and nothing outside of them. Once again, tune in for The Defining Moment with me, your boy Larry B, every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on IE Sports Radio, right here on Spreaker.com. We'll see you there.
Hey guys, if you want to talk to us during the off season, remember you can reach Caitlin at Caitlin Seaman. I'm at DK Junior 12. We would love to hear from you guys during the off season as we get ready to call the Rolex 24 in 2020 with USRN. We'll, right now as it is scheduled, have the 5 to 9 p.m. block. You're not going to want to miss this because it's going to be myself, Caitlin, and Michael trying to call a 24-hour race. 4 hours of a 24-hour race. It's going to be spectacular. It might be a spectacular disaster, but we're going to have a lot of fun, and we're probably going to rag on Michael for 2 hours if Mazda catches on fire during our shift. So you're going to want to check that out. We will let you know more information on that as it becomes available. We're going to continue with this episode of The Extra Mile. I'm going to get into IndyCar, which makes a reappearance on the program. And it's not about the continuation of testing into the windscreen, which, to give an update on that, it just finished its final tests in Sebring, a race where I think Formula 1. Wow. I honestly think, Caitlin, that IndyCar should race at Sebring, not just use it as a test track, because trying to see those cars tackle the bumps. Why are you test
tracking something if you're not racing on it? You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of testing there then?
I think it doesn't give the teams that don't do the test, they're not at a disadvantage, I guess, is why they do it. But I would love to see IndyCar try to tackle the bumps at Sebring. Although I'm pretty sure they would shatter the suspensions like 5 laps into the race, because that track is very abrasive.
But sometimes that's exciting, though.
It makes it fun because it makes it a driver's track, because it's not billiard table smooth. You actually have to respect the bumps, because one wrong bump at Sebring and you are into a wall. But one thing is not into a wall is Roger Penske's bank account, because he was able to pull off, Caitlin, one of the biggest sales, or one of the biggest purchases, rather, in modern motorsports history. If you missed it over the week and weekend, Roger Penske now owns the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He also now owns the IndyCar series. He bought it from the Holman George Company this past week and now takes control of American open wheel racing. Caitlin, our first question was, what does this mean for his involvement in the IndyCar team, which he already said that he was going to step back from the day-to-day race strategizing of that team. But you actually had a question about it yourself, so let you put that to the floor.
Well, first off, I just want to say how sometimes I'm reminded of how peasant I am, that I am concerned about buying a Starbucks drink for the day, and this man goes out and buys not only the most infamous motor speedway in America, but the entire sanctioning body along with it. Like, it just makes me feel so poor that it's mind-boggling. Like,
it does make you
think, like, yeah, like, even when I hit the big time, I'm pretty sure that the money I will make out of my entire lifetime will not cover even a third of what this cost him. Like,
it makes you look at your bank account and you're like, just wow.
Like, yeah, like, I'm so glad that I am a peasant. Like, thanks. Like, what even? But yeah, so here, this was my automatic question / concern in this, is that, yes, he said he's stepping down from the day-to-day actions, but is this going to turn into a situation like we were just complaining about with Ferrari and Formula One, that if IndyCar is going in a direction that is not substantially positive for the Penske organization, is he then going to change these situations so that it's working to benefit his team? Because yes, you can say, okay, he's stepping down from operations and what have you, but let's be honest, is Roger Penske really going to ever allow IndyCar to go in a direction that does now not benefit his team directly. Because I just can't imagine Penske letting IndyCar go in a way that all of a sudden restricts Penske Motorsports.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just a little I'm really glad that it's such a catch-22. I'm glad it's not some giant conglomerate of a company buying out IndyCar.
Which is,
like if it had to get bought
everyone's
out,
happy for, by the way.
right? Like if it had to get bought out one way or another, I'm glad it went the way it did. Absolutely. But in the same sense, I'm just concerned that it's going to end up being a Ferrari in Formula One scenario, where like the head of IndyCar is going to be like, oh, we're going to do this, this, and that, or we're going to cap this, or we're going to change that, and then Penske be like, doesn't really work for me.
Well, it's kind
and
of
he can make an excuse. He can be like, this is why it doesn't work. But whenever he says it, you're kind of going to be like, yes, okay, but like, what's the reasoning behind it? You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's the part that I'm a little concerned with.
I think it would actually be worse than a Ferrari situation in that case, because
he owns it.
At least with Ferrari, there's some pretense that they don't control the sport, but in this situation, it kind of drops all the pretenses, and it's just like, yeah, I run this. Right,
it's mine. Yeah. And I just happen to have a team inside of it. And also, isn't it also kind of one of those, like, my huge big hope and dream for IndyCar has always been that they go back to MIS.
Yes.
Which now, like, officially will never happen. Ever. Period. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Penske own the Belle Isle whole thing?
I know he helped build MIS before he left. I think his entertainment company, that's how he ended up.
Because didn't he say something about how IndyCar will never again race at MIS as long as he has anything to do with it?
Yeah.
He literally has everything to do with it now.
Yeah, and his entertainment company, I think, promotes the Belle Isle race. So that's also the company that bought the series.
That kind of sucks. Like, I didn't think about that till just now, but like that's really I got to go to the last race at MIS at IndyCar, and like it really is a track made for that, like for IndyCar even more so than NASCAR, and so like it literally kills me that they don't race there anymore. Yes. So like now it's extra depressing to know that it really, really, really will never happen again.
Well, it could, because Roger seems to be open to the idea of doing the Indy NASCAR double headers. Now, the question about that is who's going to get top billing, because I don't see NASCAR taking the back seat on that weekend. And I don't know we'll have to see what Roger decides to do anyway, because the funny part about this is Roger has cars in both series. So either way, Roger's going to get money. So that's going to have to be worked out. Maybe they do a doubleheader at MIS, or maybe we finally
none of that sounds fun though.
Maybe we finally get IndyCar back at Auto Club, where they should have never left, and probably that's where the season should probably end, under the lights in California, because we start on a street course, we should end on an oval, He's also talked about trying to reach out to the youth in the paddock, get more active on social media, which Lord knows these racing organizations need to start hitting social media a lot harder than they have. A lot of them have been late adopters. NASCAR has kind of rode the wave, and they're doing well on theirs. IndyCar's got to step up in that category as well. So there's a lot of positives that could come from this, but there's also, I don't want to say it's definitely a negative, but it's a concern. I'll put it that way. There's one big concern that we're going to be watching as how are these rule changes going to be put in, and will they be something that are put in to affect the teams equally, or is it going to prioritize Penske over the others? That's something a lot of us are going to be watching. And also, no guaranteed spots for the 500, Roger. Like,
here, I think this is going to be such a like wait and see thing. Like, I think that there's like the potential for this to be amazing. Like, I feel like there's potential for this to truly be an awesome situation where we see him truly bring IndyCar to the awesomeness that it can be, which I think it's still on its own, even going in a great direction. I love IndyCar. I think IndyCar has actually taken a lot of my passion for motorsports and honed it in. I really do enjoy it. I love the competitive of it. I like that you really don't know who's going to win going into a race. Let's be honest. There's potential for a lot of people, and it's a lot of fun. And I think that there's either this potential for him to continue this where it's going and to only enhance it even more, or there's the other side of it. And just because you own a race team doesn't mean that you should own a sanctioning body, because they are going to be run on different levels. So I kind of feel like it can either go really well, or I think it can go really poorly, and that he's going to end up making decisions that don't benefit it or end up hurting it, which is, I really hope isn't the situation. And yes, Penske is a smart, level-headed guy, but it's still part of it, though. You know what I mean? I feel like one of the better simple examples is almost to look at like coaching in football, because you can be a great assistant coach and not a great head coach, or you can be a great head coach and not a great offensive coordinator. Like, just because you're good at one spot doesn't mean you're good at everything. And so I really hope that that's not the way it goes. But I mean, we have to be honest, at the start of this, it's a potential. There is a potential that he can Ferrari veto Formula One it in IndyCar. There is a chance that that's what can happen here, is that he owns it. He can truly, and it doesn't even matter. Like you said, the pretense is gone. He could honestly just make sure that no matter what, he benefits from it.
right.
And literally nobody can do anything about it because he owns it. Or if something happens and he gets mad, he now owns Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He can do whatever he wants with it now. What if him and NASCAR get in a fight? I'm sorry, NASCAR, but you no longer are welcome to the Brickyard.
Let me
He
stop
can
you
do
right
that.
there. Let me stop you right there. If that happened, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of NASCAR fans that would celebrate rather than
yes,
be
you're not
annoyed
wrong,
because,
but I'm just saying, like, he has that power, though.
yeah. And
it's a lot of power. I mean, let's be honest. Not everybody, even if you have money, not everybody is eligible to be in that kind of position. I don't want to bring up our president, but that's another example.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he's like him, but I think I'm gonna stay with the positive route, and I think Penske's gonna be great for it. He's been in this sport for a very, very, very long time. I think he does truly love the sport for what it is, and I think he's gonna do good. I'm just saying, there's the realistic part of me has to be able to acknowledge that it can go either way.
Hey, Roger, here's one thing that'll help you get the kids back. License a good night. License an IndyCar Series game. It's been since 2005 since we had an IndyCar Series game. Please get one of those and see how you pull the youth in, because that's where you're going to get them these days. So
not in motorized self-driving cars.
No, which that's also happening next season, where the Indy Lights are going to have a autonomous car race. We'll see how that goes, because
do you know what Caitlin will not watch? That.
Yeah. I will watch it for the novelty's sake, but we were supposed to see Robo Race this season, and we haven't heard a lick about it, so I'm not sure if we
unless these cars have like guns in them and they can shoot out other cars' tires. I'm not
Twisted
interested.
Metal.
Like, I'm just being like, literally then it is very much so just cars going around in a circle. Like,
Yeah.
Cool. And it's not exciting because it's not going to do anything cool. I think the only thing robotic like that I've ever actually sat and watched and been entertained by is on TV when they do the ones that fly those little like hovercrafts through like the neon mazes.
Oh, the drone racing is awesome.
That is the only thing that I've ever watched that's been not like man driven or whatever that I've liked.
Yeah.
And also it's like the courses are really cool looking. And then they like hit nets and fall, and you're like, oh shit! Like I like was on this GoPro when it got lost, so that's entertaining.
Yep.
But I don't really think like, are we really gonna have accidents? Like, are there gonna be crashes? Because I really don't. I don't know.
I have no idea, but we shall see or not.
The future is here.
I'm not sure if I like that future, but we will see. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about NASCAR. And there's a fan favorite driver who we thought would be in a much better position right now than he is, looking like he is on his way out of the championship. We'll explain on the other side of this break here on IE Sports Radio. You're listening to The Extra Mile on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hi, everybody. It's Calvin here from USRN, here to give you an important message. Since 2017, we have done our absolute best to provide you with nothing but the highest quality of sports calls in the greatest of quantity possible. Thanks to you, our station has grown more than we ever thought. That's why, with your help, we would like to grow even further. Just think, twice the amount of your favorite calls, 24 hours of coverage, talk shows, play-by-play, game-by-game analysis, and so much more. That's right, USRN2 is officially in development. But we can't do it alone. We have set up a GoFundMe page that you can access from our homepage on the left of your screen. We also are planning special giveaways and prizes to our highest owners. Our goal here at USRN is to bring you the best calls possible at no cost to you. In order to continue to do that, we need your help now. Please check out our GoFundMe page, and if you would like to know how you can help, you can email usrnradio@gmail.com. Without your support, we couldn't do what we do.
NBA, college basketball fans out there. Tired of hearing about just the dramatic stuff in the basketball world. Tired of hearing about what such and such reward tonight and not about the game? Hey, leave all of that alone. Because on Wednesday nights, I got this show called Fast Break with Phil Jones here on the IE Sports Radio. And all we talk about is straight basketball, from where it comes down to the NBA, the NCAA, and even the WNBA. I don't discriminate. I give all my NBA, my basketball, whatever you want with sports, to the slam dunks, to the three-pointers, to the teardrops, to the game winners. I'm there. I'm speaking about it. I have a debate. I have my panel. I got a squad that rolls in. And we're going to be talking mad sports. We're going to be talking about the Lakers. We're going to be talking about even the Brooklyn Nets. We're going to be talking about who's the top team out there in the NBA. So, tired of all the drama. Tired of all the... What did he wear today? What kind of shoes he had? Forget all that. Just come over. Fast Break with Phil Jones here on IE Sports Radio every Wednesday night at 8 Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time, y'all. So, yo, tune in.
guys, if you want to keep up with everything going on with IE Sports Radio, remember to check out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages to keep up to date with everything going on here at IE Sports Radio. And head over to the website as well, www.iesportsradio.com. Get involved with the community, learn more about the hosts, listen to past IE Sports Radio episodes, and more over on www.iesportsradio.com. So we're back, white flag segment of this show, and we're going to talk about NASCAR. They are now in the semifinal round of the playoffs. 2 to go in the NASCAR season. We head to Phoenix to decide who runs for a championship in Homestead. Currently, Kevin Harvick is the most recent driver to lock in after winning from the pole in Texas. And Caitlin, that is one track, the Texas Motor Speedway, where they said, okay, we're going to redo the racetrack and we're going to make the racing better. That has failed. I think we can both say that has failed, unfortunately.
I feel like that's a pretty accurate statement.
Yeah. I was unable to see the race myself. I was in Budds Creek, but I was keeping up with the race via social media, and there were not a lot of happy fans watching this race. And from what it sounded like, the passing was limited, so to speak, but Kevin Harvick ends up winning from the pole, which I don't think we've seen that a lot this season, if at all. So he becomes the second driver to lock into the playoffs. Meanwhile, Caitlin, what is going on with Chase Elliott?
See, for once, my voodoo doll decided to work. I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to admit that on my TV. I think it's just one of those things where, again, before the break, us talking about consistency, and I think that this is kind of proof that unless you can get to the very last race, if you don't have that consistency, what do you have?
Right.
And you can win, but if you're not winning at the right exact time, it doesn't do much for you. That's like Jimmy Johnson winning at Phoenix this weekend. Like, yeah, it's great, it's a win, but it doesn't elevate him to the next level in anything. And I feel like with Chase, it's like, yeah, they hit the win. You know, the Roval was a big W for them. It was a huge W. But if that's where you peak and then everything else is just a stumble or a stutter, well, you have to be able to continue that through, especially in this playoff format. And I feel like they got so excited about it and they were so proud of it. And then what did they do with it? Or, you know what it kind of is like? It's kind of like Finding Nemo when, what is the little girl with the ponytail, the dentist's daughter or granddaughter's name? What was her name?
I do not remember.
It was, because it's like Dory. What was it? Darla. It was Darla, and all the fish were scared of Darla because what would happen? The grandpa would give Darla a fish, i.e. like Nemo at the end, and would get so excited, she would shake it, and then she would kill the damn fish. Fishy, why are you sleeping? And I kind of feel like that's a little bit like what Chase's team did. They got so excited from this one win that they killed the momentum. Instead of using the momentum, they killed it.
Yep. They ran so well at the Roval, it feels like they peaked at the wrong time, because since then, they had wrecks at Talladega, barely got in at Kansas, had issues at Martinsville with the rear end of the car breaking, and then damages the car 10 laps in at Texas. Everything that could have possibly gone wrong for this team in this third round has happened. They are now 78 points back of Martin Truex Jr. He is in must-win territory if he is going to get into the playoff or into the championship for next week at Homestead, Caitlin, do you think Chase can win at Phoenix, or is his season over?
No, I think he's done. I think that there are other drivers and teams that are far stronger at Phoenix, and I don't even know what his average is at Phoenix. Hold on, let me pull it up really quick so that we can at least use this as a comparison as we go, because I don't feel like he is a very strong contender there, unless I'm mistaken.
Well, we know Kevin Harvick as a contender there. He has dominated at this race of late, especially at this fall event, so he's got to be a favorite. And if Kevin ends up...
Here we go.
Mm-hmm. If Kevin ends up winning this race, that'll be Kyle Busch and Joey Logano getting in on points the way things sit. So we'll see what happens. And what is Chase's average?
So his average start is 5.4. His average finish is 10.14. So his best finish to date was in 2017 with a second place finish. And then in March the following year, he did third. But in November 2018, so last November, he actually finished 23rd. And that was on a running. He had actually led 16 laps in that race and still managed to finish only 23rd. And then in March this year, he did finish 14th. So statistically wise, it's not looking super well for good old Chase.
No, this was not a good race for him the last couple of times what is now the ISM Speedway. And
I'm really bad at remembering those stupid little numbers or letters.
Well, this will be the last time this track will be the semifinal race. Starting next season, it will be the decider of the championship. Not sure how I feel about that because there was nothing wrong with Homestead as the finale, but we shall see. Maybe moving.
Again, Homestead is just, you could get rid of Homestead entirely and I'd be okay with it.
See, we differ on that because I like Homestead.
Yeah.
I like Homestead since they've reconfigured it. I didn't like Homestead when it was flat, but ever since they put banking on it, it's been a much more fun race.
But I mean, there is, tradition in it too, which I think is something to consider. And I feel like the weird thing is that NASCAR, I feel like, really does not give a shit about tradition anymore, which is kind of funny for the fact that that's all their fans scream about. Because literally everything's just willy-nilly. Oh, July 4th Daytona race? We don't need that. And at Homestead, we don't need that either. All this, we don't need those. Like, it's just kind of strange to me. Like, I'm getting to this point where I'm starting to wonder if in 2 years they're going to be like, so guys, guess what? Instead of starting at Daytona, we're going to start and end at Phoenix. Like, that's kind of the way we're going now, I feel like. Like, nothing is precious anymore in this sport.
Well, we used to start the season at Riverside way back in the day, but unfortunately Riverside is now a shopping mall, if I'm correct. So it's not like Daytona has always been the start of the season, but it does feel kind of weird that we lost the July 4th race, and now that race is...
But it could be, too, is that, for the fact that that's even, what we grew up on.
Mm-hmm.
And really, clearly at this point, NASCAR is not going to gain many more followers if you can't even keep our generation interested. Like, the old generation, anybody older than us, they're going to stick with it. They're just at that point where they got it on lock. They're just going to stick with it. But I feel like our generation is just this fine line of, we're the ones having kids now. And so, really, if anybody's going to pull in another generation, it's going to be us. But they're kind of pulling away from that incentive. Mm-hmm. If I had a little child at this point, they'd grow up more watching football and hockey than they would racing because of where my priorities have fallen in my love of sports at this point. It used to be NASCAR and then Vikings practically tied, and then everything else kind of fell in more. And really, that's kind of changed as we've gone. So I don't know. I just think that they need to. And if you think about it, I mean, that's what we grew up on. We grew up on Daytona being the first year of the race of the year, being the July 4th race. Just like everything just kind of had its own set way, and that's what we grew up on, was that tradition. And like all of a sudden, you're just pooping on the traditions.
Well, the prayer is that the shakeup actually helps put some juice into the series. We know we got the new car coming and the new engine the year after. So hopefully these new changes have a positive response for the sport as a whole. And before we close out, of course, we got to do our picks, and we've only got one race this weekend, which is Phoenix, and I'm running out of time to catch you, Caitlin, in the standings. So who you got this week?
So I've actually had a bit of a toss-up between Harvick and Busch.
Mm-hmm.
Busch has won the last two. Harvick has won a lot. But I'm going to go with Kyle Busch, I think, this weekend. As much as whenever I pick him, he does crappy, but there's other people I'd rather pick, but I'm trying not to jinx my driver.
I was going to go with Kyle Busch as well. Now I need to audible, because if he wins and I pick, that doesn't help me in the points chase.
And if we both pick the same one, it's bad.
Right.
Proof being Chase Elliott. When me and Matt picked him the same weekend, and then the weirdest crap happened to him. We do have a strong jinx.
I don't remember if I picked Harvick last week, but I'm going to take Harvick this week. And if not, I'm going to take a flyer and say Chase Elliott somehow wins his way to Homestead at this point. I mean, I've got to take these Hail Mary shots, so I'm going to win the championship. So we'll see what happens. But it is now time for us to say goodnight for this episode of The Extra Mile. Remember, check out Caitlin's show, Not What It Seems. And remember, you can find my writings at WBGRnetwork.com and Lolita's at GPGirl.com. We're thinking about your girl. Hope you're doing well. As I said, I don't think I was clear that first time. You hear see Lita's writings, at gpgirl.com. But it's time to say goodnight for this episode of The Extra Mile. So for Caitlin, I'm Daryl, and we will see you at the next green flag. Good night, everybody.